Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, a peaceful place to unwind and relax. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe and like the video to get more soothing stories every night. So, where are you watching this from, and what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. Now, take a deep breath, make yourself comfortable, and let's fall asleep peacefully together. In the quiet of the night, between the shadows of an ancient castle and the corridors that hold forgotten secrets, there lies a story. A tale whispered by the past, a trace of something hidden beneath the flow of time. Deep within the grand halls of Hogwarts, beneath the cold stone floors, an artifact remains concealed, something never meant to be found, something powerful enough to change fate itself. And now, the journey begins. A path winding through darkened hallways, revealing pages of a story left behind, leading us toward the echoes of a past that never truly faded. So take a deep breath, close your eyes if you wish. Let this tale carry you away, gently pulling you from the present into a world where magic and history intertwine. Welcome to the forgotten diary of clues from the past. The library at Hogwarts had always been one of my favorite places. Something about the towering bookshelves, the scent of old parchment, and the quiet hum of knowledge waiting to be discovered made it feel almost sacred. It was a place where secrets from centuries past were tucked away, waiting for someone curious enough to uncover them. That evening, I had no intention of finding anything extraordinary. I was merely searching for a book on advanced charms for an upcoming essay when my fingers brushed against something unusual, something that wasn't aligned with the rest of the neatly arranged tomes. A thin, leather-bound book was wedged between two massive spell encyclopedias, its spine cracked with age, its cover nearly featureless except for faint engravings that had long since faded. I hesitated for a moment before carefully sliding it out from the shelf. The moment it left its resting place, a soft trail of dust danced in the dim candlelight as if the book had been waiting for someone to notice it. I turned it over in my hands, running my fingers along the edges. It wasn't a textbook, nor was it part of the library's official collection. There was no title, no identifying marks that would hint at its origin. Just an old, unassuming book, forgotten amid centuries of magical literature. My curiosity piqued. I flipped open the cover. The first page revealed neat, careful handwriting, the ink slightly faded but still legible. This diary belongs to a Everhart. If you have found this, then fate has chosen you to follow the path I could not complete. I frowned. A diary? I glanced around, half expecting Madame Pants, the strict librarian, to appear out of nowhere and snatch it from my hands. But the library was nearly empty at this hour, save for a few students hunched over their studies. I hesitated before turning the next page, my heart beating just a little faster. The entries were dated over 100 years ago. The handwriting remained elegant, but there was an urgency in the way certain words were underlined, as if the writer had been desperate to ensure their message was understood. There exists an artifact within these castle walls, an object of great power, hidden where only those who seek it with true purpose may find it. They say it can change one's fate, bending destiny itself to the will of its wielder. I have spent years searching, following whispers in the dark, chasing clues buried beneath layers of time. But my search was left unfinished. I sat down at the nearest table, suddenly oblivious to the fact that I had other studies to attend to. An artifact? One that could alter fate? It sounded like something out of a legend, the kind of tale older students like to pass around to scare first years. And yet, there was something about this that felt different. Real. The next entry was even more cryptic. If you are reading this, you must be like me, one who searches, one who cannot ignore the pull of the unknown. But be warned, power like this does not come without a cost. I have come close, but each step forward brings greater peril. Shadows linger where secrets are kept. Trust no one blindly. A shiver ran down my spine, though I couldn't tell if it was from fear or excitement. Who was Everhart? And why had no one ever mentioned this artifact before? Hogwarts was full of enchanted objects, of course, but something that could change fate itself? That wasn't something you just left lying around. The more I read, the more I felt an eerie connection to the words. The writer had left behind more than just their thoughts, they had left behind a trail. Notes on locations, descriptions of hidden chambers, vague references to obstacles they had encountered. It was a mystery woven into the very fabric of the castle, waiting to be unraveled. For a long time, I just sat there, rereading the entries, committing the details to memory. A part of me knew that this was dangerous, that if this artifact was as powerful as the diary claimed, then there was a reason it had been hidden away. But another part of me, the part that longed for adventure, for discovery, was already imagining the possibilities. I glanced at the library doors. I should tell someone, I thought. A professor, maybe. Someone who would know what to do with this kind of information. And yet, something held me back. A strange certainty settled over me. This was meant for me to find. The diary had been forgotten, tucked away where no one would think to look. It had waited. And now, it had found me. I closed the book, fingers tightening around the worn leather. The questions swirling in my mind were too many to count, but one thing was clear, this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, I would show the diary to my friends. And together, we would decide what came next. Little did I know, the moment I had opened those pages, my own fate had already begun to change. Sleep did not come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the words from the diary replayed in my mind like a whisper in the dark. An artifact that could change fate, shadows lingering where secrets are kept, trust no one blindly. I tossed and turned, trying to convince myself that it was just a story, one of many legends that Hogwarts had collected over centuries. And yet, something deep inside me refused to dismiss it so easily. The way the diary had been hidden, wedged between those books as if deliberately placed there, it felt as though it had been waiting for me. When morning finally arrived, I didn't hesitate. The moment breakfast was over, I gathered my closest friends, Elias, Marigold, and Finn, outside the great hall. We often found ourselves tangled in adventure, whether we were searching for hidden passages or sneaking into the kitchens for a late-night snack. But this time, something told me this was different. I need to show you all something, I said, keeping my voice low. Not here. Let's go to the astronomy tower. Elias raised an eyebrow. Sounds ominous. Should I be worried? You'll see, I replied, though truthfully, I wasn't sure how they would react. We made our way up the spiraling staircases, avoiding the busier corridors. The astronomy tower was quiet during the day, the professors and students only gathering there at night for stargazing. As we reached the top, I took a deep breath, then pulled the diary from my bag. What is that? Marigold asked, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. I hesitated, then opened to the first page. A diary. I found it in the library last night. And it talks about something I think we should look into. Finn, who had been leaning against the stone railing, straightened. You mean something forbidden? His eyes sparkled with mischief. Now I'm interested. Just read it first, I said, handing the book to Elias. As they took turns reading, I watched their expressions shift, curiosity, surprise, then something closer to unease. When Elias finally shut the diary, he exhaled sharply. This is insane. He tapped the book with his finger. An artifact that can change fate? That's dangerous magic. Marigold looked thoughtful. If this were real, wouldn't someone have found it already? Wouldn't the professors know about it? That's what I thought too, I admitted. But the diary says the writer came close. What if they really did find something but were stopped before they could reach it? Finn smirked. Stopped how? You think there's some secret society lurking in the shadows, waiting to silence anyone who gets too close? His joke didn't land. A quiet tension settled between us. Elias flipped through the pages again. Look at this. He pointed to a section I hadn't fully examined yet. This symbol appears more than once. I leaned in. It was a rough sketch, 2 interlocking circles with a line running through them. It looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. I've seen this before, Marigold murmured, running a finger over the drawing. I think it's in one of the old tapestries near the Ravenclaw Tower. I exchanged a glance with Elias. Then that's our next step. Finn grinned. I do love a good treasure hunt. Excitement hummed in my veins. We had our first real clue. But as we descended the tower stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching us. The corridors of Hogwarts always held an air of mystery, but that afternoon, as we made our way toward the Ravenclaw Tower, the shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the whispers of moving portraits felt more conspiratorial than usual. Whether it was my imagination or something more, I couldn't tell. But the weight of the diary in my bag made me hyper-aware of every step we took. Marigold led the way, her confidence unwavering. Though she was a Hufflepuff, she had an uncanny ability to navigate the castle's hidden corners. The tapestry I was talking about is on the 3rd floor, just past the old dueling practice room, she explained. It's one of those things most students pass by without really looking at. As we turned the final corner, the tapestry in question came into view. It was massive, stretching from the ceiling down to the stone floor, its deep blue fabric embroidered with golden threads that had dulled over time. The image depicted a starry sky over a vast landscape, with figures cloaked in robes standing in a half-circle around a pedestal. Floating above the pedestal was the very same symbol from the diary, the 2 interlocking circles with a line through them. There it is, Elias muttered, stepping closer. This can't be a coincidence. I traced my fingers along the woven threads, my pulse quickening. There was something familiar about the way the figures stood, their hands raised as if performing an incantation. This has to be connected to the artifact. Look at the way they're gathered around it. It's like they're channeling magic into whatever's on that pedestal. Marigold examined the lower edges of the tapestry. If this is really a clue, then there must be something hidden here. Finn, who had been standing back with his arms crossed, finally stepped forward. "All right, let's see if the old Hogwarts trick works." He pulled out his wand, aimed it at the tapestry, and whispered, "Revelio." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, faint golden letters shimmered into existence along the fabric surface, just beneath the pedestal. The words were in an old dialect of English, but their meaning was still clear enough to understand. The path to fate lies where knowledge and time entwine. Elias read it aloud, his brow furrowing. "Knowledge and time, that has to mean the library, doesn't it?" I nodded. "And not just any section of the library. It must mean the restricted section." Finn groaned. "Of course it does. Because breaking into forbidden areas of Hogwarts always turns out so well." Marigold shot him a look. "No one said anything about breaking in. We just need to figure out what we're looking for." I couldn't stop staring at the glowing inscription as it slowly faded back into the fabric. The diary had led us here, and now the tapestry was pointing us toward the next piece of the puzzle. This wasn't just a legend. It was real. And we were following the same path that Everhard had walked all those years ago. I took a deep breath and turned to my friends. "Tonight, we go to the library." Elias crossed his arms. "You do realize Madame Pants is probably the closest thing Hogwarts has to a guard dog, right?" Finn grinned. "Yeah, but that just makes it more fun." Marigold sighed. "I can't believe I let you all talk me into these things." I clutched the diary tighter. This is bigger than just sneaking into the restricted section. If this artifact really exists, then we need to know why it was hidden in the first place. As we left the tapestry behind, I could almost feel the weight of unseen eyes upon us once again. The castle itself seemed to be listening, waiting. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Night at Hogwarts had a peculiar kind of stillness. By day, the castle was alive with laughter, hurried footsteps, and the occasional explosion from a misfired spell. But after curfew, it transformed into something entirely different, quiet, watchful, almost as if the walls themselves were listening. I clutched the diary tightly as we crept through the dimly lit corridors, the flickering torches casting long shadows that danced across the stone walls. Elias walked beside me, his expression serious, while Finn and Marigold followed closely behind. None of us spoke. We had agreed to meet outside the library just past midnight when the halls were at their emptiest. Getting caught meant detention at best, worse if we stumbled upon one of the stricter professors. But something about this mystery felt too important to ignore. The restricted section had always fascinated me. Even in daylight, it loomed at the far end of the library, its entrance blocked by a heavy iron gate. Students weren't allowed in without special permission from a professor, and even then, access was rarely granted unless the request was deemed academically necessary. To most, it was nothing more than a section of books too dangerous or advanced for ordinary students. But tonight, it was our next destination. Finn peered around the last corner before motioning for us to follow. "Coast is clear," he whispered. The library doors loomed ahead, the large wooden frames adorned with carved runes that seemed to glow faintly in the dim candlelight. As carefully as possible, Elias pushed against them, and to our relief, they creaked open just wide enough for us to slip through. The air inside was thick with the scent of aged parchment and dust. Towering shelves stretched up toward the vaulted ceiling, their contents illuminated only by the soft golden light of enchanted lanterns. At this hour, the library was almost eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustling of pages from self-sorting books or the distant flutter of a ghost passing through the aisles. "We need to find a way past the gate," I whispered, leading the group toward the restricted section. The iron bars stood as imposing as ever, their cold metal reflecting the faint glow of candlelight. A large padlock, reinforced with enchantments, hung at the center of the gate. Even if we had the key, it wouldn't be as simple as unlocking it. The restricted section was protected by magic. Any attempt to bypass it incorrectly could set off alarms or, worse, wake Madame Pants. Elias examined the lock. "Alhambra won't work on this," he murmured. "They've got extra wards in place." Finn smirked. "Good thing I came prepared." From his robe pocket, he produced a small, twisted piece of metal, a lock-picking tool, enchanted to bypass minor protective spells. I raised an eyebrow. "Where did you get that?" He winked. "Let's just say I have connections." As Finn got to work on the lock, Marigold kept watch, her eyes darting toward the entrance. "Hurry up," she whispered. Finn's fingers moved deftly, and for a moment there was only silence. Then a soft click. The padlock released, and the iron gate swung open an inch. We exchanged glances, then stepped inside. The moment we crossed the threshold, the air felt heavier, charged with something unseen. The restricted section was different from the rest of the library. The books here weren't merely old, they were dangerous. Some were bound in enchanted leather that seemed to shift under the candlelight, while others had chains wrapped around them as if to prevent them from escaping. The entire section smelled faintly of ink, dust, and something metallic, like old magic lingering in the air. "We need to find something about the symbol," I whispered, opening the diary and flipping back to the sketch. Marigold ran her fingers along the book spines, scanning the titles. "If this is about fate and time, we should look for something related to magical artifacts or ancient enchantments." Elias nodded. "There should be something on divination magic, too. If this artifact can change fate, it might have connections to prophecy." We spread out, each searching through the countless shelves. Time passed in near silence, save for the occasional whisper as we found books of interest. I pulled one from the shelf, The Lost Relics of the Wizarding World, and flipped through its pages. It detailed various magical objects throughout history, from the fabled Philosopher's Stone to artifacts long forgotten. But there was no mention of the symbol. Finn, meanwhile, had found something in a tome titled Echoes of Time, the Unwritten Magics. "Listen to this," he said, his voice hushed. "Some artifacts hold not only power, but the ability to alter the very fabric of one's existence. These objects, created through ancient means, are rare and often hidden away, for their use can bend destiny itself. Legends speak of one such relic lost within the walls of a great school, known only to those who seek beyond written history." My heart pounded. That has to be it. Marigold frowned. But if it was hidden, why leave behind clues? Why not erase its existence entirely? Elias turned a few pages in another book. Because magic like this isn't easily forgotten. The more powerful the object, the more it resists being erased. He glanced at me. "And if Everhart got close to finding it, that means it's still here." A sudden noise froze us in place. A soft shuffling, then the distinct sound of a book dropping to the floor. We exchanged panicked glances. Someone else was here. Finn extinguished his lantern, and we pressed ourselves against the nearest bookshelf, hearts pounding. In the darkness, the restricted section felt suffocating, the rows of bookshelves stretching endlessly into the shadows. Another sound, footsteps this time, slow and deliberate. Marigold squeezed my arm. Not Madame Pants, her eyes seemed to say. Whoever this was, they weren't supposed to be here either. I held my breath, trying to listen. The steps grew closer, pausing just on the other side of the aisle where we hid. Then, after what felt like an eternity, silence. We waited. 1 minute. 2. Finally, Finn exhaled quietly. "They're gone," he whispered. We stepped out cautiously, scanning the aisles. No sign of movement. No sign of anyone at all. But something felt wrong. Elias bent down, picking up the fallen book. It had no title, its cover worn and faded. He opened it and sucked in a breath. It's the same symbol. I peered over his shoulder. There, on the first page, was the interlocking circles with the line through them. But beneath it, in ink that looked almost fresh, were words we hadn't seen before. Turn back. Or be claimed by the past. A chill ran down my spine. Whoever had been here, whoever had dropped this book, had left behind a warning. But instead of fear, something else settled in my chest. We were on the right path. And now, there was no turning back. For several moments, none of us spoke. The warning on the page seemed to pulse in the dim light, the ink looking almost fresh as if someone had written it mere moments ago. Turn back. Or be claimed by the past. The weight of those words settled deep in my stomach, cold and unshakable. Elias flipped through the brittle pages of the book with careful fingers, his eyes scanning each word. This was left here for us to find. His voice was quiet but firm. Someone knew we'd come looking. Finn let out a slow breath, rubbing the back of his neck. Okay, so we officially have a mysterious book warning us of doom. Fantastic. His usual smirk was absent, replaced with something more serious. But what does it actually mean? Marigold leaned in, studying the pages over Elias's shoulder. Maybe it's not a threat. Maybe it's advice. She hesitated, chewing her lip. This is a book about the artifact, right? What if whoever left this message is trying to warn us about something that happened before? I swallowed, glancing at the diary still tucked under my arm. Everhart. They all looked at me. If she was close to finding the artifact, I continued, maybe something did happen. Something that made her leave behind clues instead of taking it for herself. If the past is dangerous, maybe it's not just history. The thought made my skin prickle. Magic was strange in Hogwarts, twisting through time in ways that weren't always linear. Spells lingered in forgotten corridors, voices from centuries past whispered in enchanted objects, and ghosts roamed as echoes of unfinished stories. If this artifact truly had the power to change fate, what if it wasn't just hidden? What if it was trapped in time itself? Elias turned back to the beginning of the book, scanning the first page. There has to be more. He ran a finger down the inked words, eyes narrowing. Look at this. He pointed to a phrase written in the margins, barely visible under the faded text. I leaned closer, my heart pounding as I read. Knowledge lost in time shall whisper where the past remains. We exchanged glances. The past remains, Marigold murmured. Her eyes widened. The pensive room. My breath caught. It made sense. The pensive room, tucked away deep in the castle, was a hidden chamber where old memories were stored in enchanted basins. It was a place of echoes, where moments from the past could be watched as if they were happening in real time. Most students didn't even know it existed, and even fewer had ever set foot inside. Finn let out a soft whistle. All right. I'll say it, this just got way more interesting. I clutched the diary. If we go there, we might be able to see what Everhart saw. Elias snapped the book shut. Then we don't have a choice. That's our next step. We didn't waste time. Leaving the restricted section was easier than sneaking in, though I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was still watching us from the shadows. As we slipped out of the library and back into the empty corridors, the weight of the book in Elias's hands and the diary in mine felt heavier than before. The pensive room was located in one of the castle's oldest wings, past a hallway most students never ventured into. By the time we reached the entrance, the air had grown colder, and the torches flickered as if disturbed by an unseen presence. The door was locked, but Marigold, ever the problem solver, muttered a quiet alhamra under her breath. The ancient wood groaned softly as the door creaked open, revealing the chamber beyond. The room was circular, its stone walls lined with shelves holding ancient memory vials, each one shimmering faintly under the enchanted glow of floating candles. At the center stood the pensive itself, a large basin carved from smooth silver, filled with an ethereal liquid that swirled like liquid moonlight. Elias stepped forward cautiously. We need to find the right memory. Marigold turned to the shelves, scanning the labels on the vials. These go back centuries, but if Everhart's memory is here, it must be from around her time. Finn frowned. And what year would that be? I opened the diary and flipped to the inside cover, where Everhart had scrawled her name. Beneath it, in smaller handwriting, was a date, 1892. There, I said, pointing. That's when she was here. Marigold's fingers skimmed the rows of files before she let out a small gasp. Got it. She pulled a small glass vial from the shelf, the liquid inside glowing faintly. The label was worn, but the name was clear. Everhart, The Search. A thrill of excitement and fear shot through me. This was it. We gathered around the pensive, exchanging glances. Elias was the first to step forward. Without hesitation, he uncorked the vial and tipped the memory into the swirling basin. The liquid swirled faster, forming shifting images in its surface, glimpses of another time, another Hogwarts. I took a deep breath. Together? They nodded. And with that, we leaned forward, letting the magic pull us in. The sensation was like falling through water. The room around us dissolved into a blur of silver mist before reforming into something solid. When we landed, we were no longer in the pensive room. We were standing in the Hogwarts of the past. The air was colder here, and the torches flickered with dim, golden light. The castle looked the same yet different. The stones were less worn, the portraits younger, the tapestries vibrant with fresh color. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, and we turned just in time to see a figure rushing past. A girl in Hogwarts robes, her dark hair swept behind her, a book clutched tightly to her chest. Everhart. I held my breath. She was real. And we were watching history unfold. She didn't see us, of course, just a memory repeating itself in an endless loop. But the urgency in her steps, the way she glanced over her shoulder as if being followed, it sent a shiver down my spine. She turned a corner, and we followed, keeping pace as she moved deeper into the castle. She stopped in front of a door. An old wooden archway, its frame carved with the same interlocking circles as the diary. The same symbol from the tapestry. Everhart hesitated, as if battling some internal conflict. Then, squaring her shoulders, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. We followed. The room beyond was unlike anything I had ever seen in Hogwarts. It was vast, lined with towering shelves filled with objects wrapped in cloth, locked in glass cases, or resting on pedestals. Some glowed with enchantments, others hummed faintly with dormant magic. Everhart moved with purpose, her fingers skimming the artifacts as if searching for something specific. Then she stopped in front of one pedestal. It was empty. Her expression darkened. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a scrap of parchment. She read it once, then crumpled it in frustration. Too late, she whispered. They took it. A shadow flickered at the edge of the room. Everhart's breath hitched. She turned just as the memory began to unravel, dissolving around us. I gasped as we were pulled backward, the sensation of falling gripping me once more. When we landed, we were back in the pensive room. Heart pounding, I turned to my friends. She never found it, I whispered. She was too late. Elias clenched his fists. But that means someone else did. Marigold exhaled shakily. And if the artifact wasn't lost? Finn's voice was quiet but firm. Then it's still here. A heavy silence fell between us. The search wasn't over. It had only just begun. Silence stretched between us in the dimly lit pensive room. The weight of what we had just seen clung to the air like a thick fog. Everhart had been close, so close. Yet, the artifact had already been taken before she could find it. But by who? And where was it now? Elias ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. All right. We now know for sure that the artifact wasn't just a myth. It was real, and someone took it before Everhart could reach it. Marigold sat down on the stone floor, her brow furrowed in deep thought. It's strange, though. If someone took it over 100 years ago, why hasn't it resurfaced since? I glanced down at the diary in my hands, my fingers brushing over Everhart's faded handwriting. Maybe it's still here, I murmured. Maybe whoever took it hid it somewhere else in the castle. Finn let out a low whistle. Hogwarts is huge. It could be anywhere. Elias shook his head. Not anywhere. If they went through all the trouble of taking it, they wouldn't just leave it in some random corridor. They'd put it somewhere no one would think to look. Marigold's eyes widened as an idea struck her. Not no one. Only those who already knew about it. Realization dawned on me. You mean? The Chamber of Secrets. A thick silence followed her words. Finn let out a nervous chuckle. Tell me you're joking. Elias didn't laugh. He crossed his arms, thinking. It would make sense, he admitted. The chamber was hidden for centuries, and very few people have ever accessed it. If you wanted to hide something dangerous, it would be the perfect place. But the entrance was only revealed after Harry Potter defeated the basilisk, I pointed out. Before that, no one even knew where it was. Marigold's eyes sparkled with determination. Exactly. So if the artifact was taken before Everhard got to it, then whoever took it must have had access to the chamber long before Harry did. I felt my stomach drop. You're saying it was a Parselmouth? Elias met my gaze. It had to be. The thought sent chills down my spine. There were very few Parselmouths in history, and most of them were connected to Salazar Slytherin's bloodline. The most infamous, of course, had been Voldemort. But he wouldn't have been around in 1892, which meant it could have been someone before him, I said slowly. Another descendant of Slytherin. Finn sighed, rubbing his temples. Okay, hold on. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that this mystery person took the artifact and stashed it in the Chamber of Secrets. How do we get in? None of us are Parselmouths. Marigold bit her lip. Maybe we don't need to be. She pulled out her wand and cast a quick spell, summoning an old book from one of the shelves. It landed in her hands with a soft thud. She flipped through the pages before stopping at an illustration of a stone doorway covered in serpentine carvings. The entrance to the chamber, she read aloud, has been historically linked to an ancient section of the dungeons, rumored to house forgotten tunnels that lead to various hidden chambers beneath the castle. She looked up at us. What if there's another way in? A secret passage even Voldemort didn't know about? Elias straightened. Then we need to find it. Finn groaned. We really need to stop getting into situations that might get us killed. I grinned. Where's the fun in that? Finding an alternative entrance to the Chamber of Secrets was easier said than done. The Hogwarts dungeons were a maze of winding tunnels, damp corridors, and locked doors. We spent the next several nights sneaking down whenever we could, searching for anything that might resemble an undiscovered passage. It was on the third night that we finally caught a break. We were deep in the dungeons, past the potions classroom and the Slytherin common room, in a section of the castle that even ghosts rarely wandered. The air was stale, thick with the scent of damp stone and old magic. Elias ran his fingers along the walls, searching for anything unusual. There has to be something, he muttered. Marigold was flipping through the book again when she suddenly froze. Wait. Look at this. She turned the book around so we could see an old, faded map. It depicted the dungeons as they were centuries ago, before renovations, before forgotten passageways were sealed off. There. She pointed to a spot near the lower levels. This tunnel doesn't exist anymore. At least, not on modern maps. Finn frowned. So it was blocked off? Or hidden? That was all we needed to hear. We followed the map, tracing the path down a long, narrow corridor that sloped downward. The air grew colder with every step, and the further we walked, the less familiar everything became. And then, Elias stopped suddenly. There, he whispered. At the far end of the corridor stood an ancient-looking door, its surface covered in intricate carvings of snakes. My heart pounded. We had found it. Finn stepped forward, running a hand over the stone surface. No handle. Because it isn't meant to be opened normally, Elias murmured. He studied the serpentine carvings. If we were parcel mouths, we'd be able to speak to it and open the door. But we're not. I frowned, thinking, maybe we don't need to speak parcel tongue. Maybe we just need to make the door think we can. Marigold's eyes widened. You mean mimic the language? I nodded. Harry Potter was able to open the chamber a second time because he had heard Parseltongue before. What if we do the same? Finn blinked. Okay, but none of us have ever heard it. Marigold bit her lip. Maybe not in person. She flipped through her book again, stopping on a page about Parseltongue. With a flick of her wand, she whispered, sonorous, amplifying the text. A soft hissing sound filled the air. It was eerie, unnatural, the sound of Parseltongue recorded in magical script. The moment it echoed through the chamber, the snake carvings on the door began to shift, their stone eyes glowing faintly. The door trembled. Then, with a deep, resonant click, it began to slide open. A gust of cold air rushed past us, carrying the scent of something ancient. Elias glanced at me. Are we really doing this? I swallowed hard. No turning back now. Marigold tightened her grip on her wand. Let's find out what's been hidden for over a century. With that, we stepped inside, and the darkness swallowed us whole. The moment we stepped through the ancient doorway, the torches behind us flickered and went out, plunging us into near darkness. The air was thick with an eerie silence, as if we had stepped into a place forgotten by time itself. Only the soft glow from the tip of our wands illuminated the stone walls ahead, revealing a narrow passage leading deeper beneath the castle. Finn let out a slow breath beside me. Okay, this is officially the creepiest thing we've done. Marigold's voice was calm, but I could hear the tension underneath. Let's keep moving. We pressed forward, the tunnel sloping downward. The deeper we went, the colder the air became. A faint mist curled along the floor, swirling around our feet. The walls were lined with ancient serpentine carvings, their eyes appearing to glow faintly when the light from our wands hit them at just the right angle. Elias, walking ahead, suddenly stopped. He raised a hand, signaling us to be quiet. Look, he whispered. Ahead, the passage opened into a vast underground chamber. The ceiling arched high above us, disappearing into shadows. At the center of the room stood a massive stone pedestal, upon which rested an ancient-looking chest. The metal glinted under our light, its surface etched with intricate patterns of interwoven serpents. Finn whistled under his breath. That has to be it. I stepped forward cautiously, scanning the room. Something's not right, I murmured. It's too easy. Elias nodded. Agreed. If someone went through all this trouble to hide the artifact, they wouldn't just leave it out in the open. Marigold studied the floor, then pointed. There. The stone slabs surrounding the pedestal were marked with barely visible runes, arranged in a circular pattern. Traps, most likely. A warning left behind by whoever hid the artifact here. Finn took a careful step closer, eyeing the floor. How do we know what triggers it? Marigold pulled out her wand and whispered, Revelio. A faint glow spread across the chamber floor, revealing a series of invisible symbols between the runes. Protective magic. Old, powerful, designed to keep something in just as much as to keep others out. Elias clenched his jaw. Whatever's in that chest, they didn't want it to be found. I felt a shiver run through me. Then we better make sure we're ready for whatever happens next. After careful examination, we found a narrow path through the rune-marked floor, small gaps where the protected enchantments didn't seem as strong. We moved cautiously, placing our feet exactly where Marigold instructed, avoiding the glowing symbols as best we could. It took us several long, tense minutes to reach the pedestal. Up close, the chest was even more imposing. The lock was old, its keel shaped like a serpent's eye. Elias pulled out his wand. "All right, let's open it." Marigold whispered a counter-charm to weaken the protection spells around it. The air around the chest shimmered as her magic worked against the old enchantments. I reached forward and pressed my fingers against the cool metal. The moment I did, a low hiss echoed through the chamber. The carvings on the pedestal moved. Stone serpents slithered along the surface, their eyes flaring a sickly green. The air vibrated with a deep, guttural whisper. "Who dares disturb the hidden fate?" Finn cursed. I knew there was going to be a creepy voice. Marigold kept her wand raised, her grip tightening. "It's some kind of magical guardian." I swallowed hard. We need to show that we're not here to destroy anything, just to find the truth. Elias nodded. "Let me try something." He cleared his throat and spoke, his voice steady. "We seek only knowledge. The artifact is lost to time, and we wish to understand its story." The whispering voice coiled around us like mist. "Knowledge comes at a price." The runes on the floor flared to life. The stone beneath us trembled. Then, in an instant, the carvings stopped moving. The glow faded. The chest clicked open. I let out a shaky breath. That worked. Elias exhaled. Apparently. Finn ran a hand down his face. "Okay, next time, let's assume everything in this place is cursed, yeah?" I ignored him and slowly lifted the lid of the chest. A soft hum filled the air, like the sound of a distant song just out of reach. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was a small object. An amulet. It was made of obsidian, its surface polished and smooth, yet the moment I looked at it, my vision shifted. Colors deepened, shadows stretched unnaturally, and for the briefest moment, I felt like I was standing in a different time, somewhere familiar yet wrong. I blinked hard, and the sensation vanished. Elias frowned. "Did you feel that?" I nodded, unable to find my voice. Marigold reached for the diary in my satchel, flipping through Everhart's notes. "She described it," she murmured. "Said it was an amulet of forgotten fates." Finn raised an eyebrow. "Sounds ominous." Marigold kept reading. "It's not just an artifact. It's a piece of lost time, magic that exists outside the normal flow. If someone uses it," she hesitated, "it can alter fate." Elias's expression darkened. "Change the past?" Marigold shook her head. "Not quite. It doesn't rewrite history, but it shifts the course of events. Like a ripple in time." Finn exhaled sharply. That's insane. I stared at the amulet, feeling its weight in my palm. Everhart had searched for this, risked everything to find it. But she had been too late. Now, over 100 years later, it was in our hands. What do we do with it? I asked softly. Elias hesitated. We take it somewhere safe. Marigold bit her lip. Do we use it? That question hung in the air. Finn folded his arms. I don't know about you lot, but I don't trust anything that can shift fate. That sounds like something out of a bad prophecy. I tightened my grip on the amulet. Deep down, something inside me whispered that this wasn't over. Everhart had failed to retrieve it. Someone else had hidden it away, locking it in time, ensuring it would never be found. But why? And if it was meant to stay hidden, had we just made a mistake? A sudden rumbling shook the chamber. The runes on the floor flared back to life, this time with a violent red glow. The walls trembled, dust cascading from the ceiling. The whispering voice returned, sharper, more urgent. The past is watching. The stone serpents moved. Not just carvings now. Real. Slithering, twisting, their eyes burning with magic. Elias grabbed my arm. We need to go. The ground cracked beneath us. The chamber was collapsing. I clutched the amulet, heart pounding. The past wasn't just watching. It was fighting back. The entire chamber shook violently as if the castle itself was rejecting our presence. The air crackled with raw, ancient magic, a force so overwhelming that I felt it hum through my bones. The stone serpents that once lay dormant in the carvings were now alive, slithering across the walls and floor, their emerald eyes gleaming with something unnatural. The past is watching, the whispering voice repeated, growing louder, more insistent. I clutched the obsidian amulet tighter. It was warm against my palm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The moment I touched it, I saw flashes of things that didn't belong to me, glimpses of forgotten memories, fractured images of a world just slightly wrong. A long corridor bathed in moonlight. A shadow moving swiftly through the darkness. The flash of a wand, the whispered echo of a spell. And then a face. A woman with piercing silver eyes. I gasped, stumbling backward as the vision shattered. My mind was yanked back into the present, to the chaos unfolding around us. Marigold was pulling at my sleeve, her voice urgent. We have to get out of here. Elias and Finn were already moving, dodging as pieces of the ceiling began to crumble. The stone serpents hissed and lunged, their sleek, dark bodies weaving unnaturally through the air. We need to retrace our steps. Finn shouted. Same way we came. But as I turned, I saw it, the doorway we had entered through was sealing shut, massive stone slabs grinding into place. If we didn't move now, we'd be trapped down here forever. Elias raised his wand. Bombarda! A deafening explosion rocked the chamber, sending dust and shattered stone flying. The impact barely left a crack in the ancient walls. The magic protecting this place was stronger than anything we had anticipated. The amulet, Marigold gasped, her eyes darting to my clenched hand. It responded to you. What? I panted. You felt something when you touched it, didn't you? She asked. It showed you something. It's connected to the magic here. I swallowed hard. I saw someone. A woman. Silver eyes. Marigold's brows furrowed. Describe her. I barely had time to think, the chamber continuing to shake around us. She looked old, but not elderly. Like she carried years of knowledge. And her robes, they weren't like ours. They were more like, my breath hitched as realization struck. They looked like Everhearts. Marigold's eyes widened. You saw her, Elias said, his voice steady but urgent. Not just saw her, I whispered. I think she's here. As if in answer, the whispering voice deepened, turning into a hollow echo that rang through the chamber. The past is watching. The past remembers. A gust of magic swept through the room, and suddenly, a shape flickered into existence before us. A figure, hazy, like a memory barely clinging to reality. She stood near the chest, her silver eyes locked onto mine. Everheart. The entire chamber shook violently as if the castle itself was rejecting our presence. The air crackled with raw, ancient magic, a force so overwhelming that I felt it hum through my bones. The stone serpents that once lay dormant in the carvings were now alive, slithering across the walls and floor, their emerald eyes gleaming with something unnatural. The past is watching, the whispering voice repeated, growing louder, more insistent. I clutched the obsidian amulet tighter. It was warm against my palm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The moment I touched it, I saw flashes of things that didn't belong to me, glimpses of forgotten memories, fractured images of a world just slightly wrong. A long corridor bathed in moonlight. A shadow moving swiftly through the darkness. The flash of a wand, the whispered echo of a spell. And then a face. A woman with piercing silver eyes. I gasped, stumbling backward as the vision shattered. My mind was yanked back into the present, to the chaos unfolding around us. Marigold was pulling at my sleeve, her voice urgent. We have to get out of here. Elias and Finn were already moving, dodging as pieces of the ceiling began to crumble. The stone serpents hissed and lunged, their sleek, dark bodies weaving unnaturally through the air. We need to retrace our steps. Finn shouted. Same way we came. But as I turned, I saw it, the doorway we had entered through was sealing shut, massive stone slabs grinding into place. If we didn't move now, we'd be trapped down here forever. Elias raised his wand. Bombarda! A deafening explosion rocked the chamber, sending dust and shattered stone flying. The impact barely left a crack in the ancient walls. The magic protecting this place was stronger than anything we had anticipated. The amulet, Marigold gasped, her eyes darting to my clenched hand. It responded to you. What? I panted. You felt something when you touched it, didn't you? She asked. It showed you something. It's connected to the magic here. I swallowed hard. I saw someone. A woman. Silver eyes. Marigold's brows furrowed. Describe her. I barely had time to think, the chamber continuing to shake around us. She looked old, but not elderly. Like she carried years of knowledge. And her robes, they weren't like ours. They were more like, my breath hitched as realization struck. They looked like Everhearts. Marigold's eyes widened. You saw her, Elias said, his voice steady but urgent. "Not just saw her," I whispered. "I think she's here." As if in answer, the whispering voice deepened, turning into a hollow echo that rang through the chamber. "The past is watching. The past remembers." A gust of magic swept through the room, and suddenly a shape flickered into existence before us. A figure, hazy, like a memory barely clinging to reality. She stood near the chest, her silver eyes locked onto mine. Everhart. And so, the past returns to silence. The whispers fade, the dust settles, and the echoes of forgotten footsteps disappear into the shadows once more. The journey through hidden chambers and lost memories has come to an end, leaving only the quiet hum of magic lingering in the air. Some secrets are meant to be uncovered, while others are meant to rest. Tonight, the past remains undisturbed. The artifact is safe, the story is told, and now the castle sleeps just as you should too. Close your eyes, let the weight of the night embrace you. Let the gentle pull of dreams guide you somewhere far beyond time, where adventures wait for another night. Until then, rest well, and may the whispers of history always bring you peace, not fear. Good night.